In the crimson dusk of Mars, Ares 9 Station stood as humanity's furthest outpost, a collection of reinforced domes and tunnels carved into the rusty landscape. The year was 2087, and for nearly a decade, the 23 crew members had called this desolate world home. Among them was Dr. Lin Tran, the station's communications engineer and linguist, whose expertise bridged the vast emptiness between Mars and Earth. Lin was monitoring routine transmissions when it happened. The regular pulse of data between worlds stuttered, skipped, and then fell silent. At first, she thought it was equipment failure, not uncommon with the aging systems they relied upon. She ran diagnostics, recalibrated the primary array, and even ventured outside in a pressure suit to check the external antenna. Nothing. It was as if Ares 9 had suddenly been erased from existence. The final transmission that had reached Earth contained only a strange audio fragment and 2 words: "Look up." Those words would haunt Lin in the months that followed, as she was assigned to lead the emergency rescue mission aboard the supply ship Phoebe, which had been hastily repurposed for this critical operation. As the foremost expert on Mars communications protocols, and the only person who had analyzed the final cryptic message extensively, Lin was the natural choice to head the investigative team. "I don't understand why they chose those words," she confided to Commander James Rivera during their pre-launch briefing on the lunar staging platform. "Of all the information they could have transmitted, status reports, emergency protocols, coordinates, why look up?" Rivera, a veteran of 3 Mars missions, regarded her with the measured gaze of someone who had seen too much to be easily rattled. Perhaps it wasn't a choice. Perhaps it was all they could manage. The implications of his words settled heavily between them. Phoebe launched within the week, carrying a crew of 7 specialists selected for their expertise in emergency operations, medicine, and Mars environmental systems. The journey would take 4 months, even with the enhanced propulsion systems installed specifically for this rescue operation. 4 months in which the fate of 23 colonists hung in balance, their silence growing more ominous with each passing day. Lin spent most of her waking hours in the communications lab, a converted storage compartment that now housed the most sophisticated signal analysis equipment ever sent beyond Earth orbit. She played the final transmission over and over, filtering it through algorithms designed to extract meaning from noise.
"Look up!"
The voice was distorted, possibly from interference, but Lin was almost certain it belonged to Dr. Marcus Wong, Ares 9's mission director. What troubled her was the strange audio that preceded the words, a rhythmic pattern that defied conventional analysis. It wasn't mechanical in nature, nor did it match any known environmental sounds from Mars. It almost seemed deliberate, like a code. On the 83rd day of their journey, the first disaster struck. Phoebe encountered an unusually dense dust storm, a massive wall of rusty particles stretching thousands of kilometers across their path. Such storms were common on Mars, but encountering one in transit was unprecedented. "We need to adjust course," Rivera ordered from the command deck. "Navigation. Plot us a route around this thing." "Sir, that would add weeks to our journey," the navigation officer protested. "And plowing through it might leave us stranded," Rivera countered. "We're no good to Ares 9 if we never arrive." Lin, who had been summoned to the command deck, studied the swirling maelstrom on the view screens. Something about its movement pattern triggered a memory, the rhythmic audio from the final transmission. "Wait," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. I think we should go through it." Rivera turned to her, his expression incredulous. "Based on what, Dr. Tran?" "The pattern," she explained, pulling up the audio spectrogram on her tablet and placing it beside the storm visualization. "They match. This storm, or something like it, is what they were trying to tell us about." The navigation officer squinted at the comparison. That's not possible. How would they know about a storm that formed after they lost contact?" "I don't know," Lynn admitted. But I believe this is a clue, and I believe look up was a directive, not just a random phrase. After heated debate, Rivera reluctantly agreed to a compromise. They would skirt the edge of the storm, close enough to gather data, but not so close as to risk the ship. As Phoebe approached the dust cloud's perimeter, the sensors began recording unprecedented levels of electromagnetic activity. It's almost like it's alive, whispered Dr. Amelia Zhao, the mission's exobiologist, as she studied the readings. Her usually composed demeanor had given way to undisguised wonder. Lynn felt a chill run down her spine. Or communicating. The ship's systems began to malfunction as they paralleled the storm front. Navigation instruments flickered, life support stuttered, and the engines experienced power fluctuations. Rivera ordered an immediate withdrawal to safer distance, but not before the main propulsion system suffered a critical failure. Assessment, he demanded once they'd stabilized. The chief engineer's report was grim. The exotic particle bombardment from the storm had corrupted several crucial components. They could continue to Mars, but at reduced speed. Their arrival would be delayed by at least 3 weeks, and their departure capabilities were now questionable. We might make it there, the engineer concluded, but getting back to Earth? That's another matter entirely. Rivera dismissed the crew to their duties, but asked Lynn to remain. When they were alone, he fixed her with a stern gaze. You pushed for this approach, Dr. Tran. I hope your hunch was worth it. We gathered valuable data, at the cost of our engines and possibly our return journey, he interrupted. 23 lives may depend on us reaching them in time. And now, we've compromised that mission. With respect, Commander, those lives were likely compromised long before we launched, Lynn said quietly. We haven't heard from them in over 5 months. We need to be prepared for the possibility that we're not conducting a rescue, but an investigation. Rivera's expression hardened. We don't abandon our people, Dr. Tran. Not while there's still hope. I'm not suggesting abandonment. I'm suggesting we need to understand what happened to prevent it from happening again. The storm, the message, they're connected. Your theories won't matter if we can't reach Ares 9, Rivera replied, his tone final. Fix our engines, Dr. Tran. That's your priority now. The remainder of the journey was tense. Lynn divided her time between helping with engine repairs and continuing her analysis of the mysterious signal. The ARX exploration robot, programmed with preliminary translation algorithms, assisted her in mapping patterns and correlations. But even its advanced processing couldn't definitively interpret the strange audio sequence. As Mars grew from a bright red star to a discernible disk, then to the massive rusty world that filled their viewports, the crew's anxiety increased. Orbital scans showed Ares 9 structures still intact, but there was no sign of activity, no response to their increasingly desperate hails. It was Dr. Zhao who noticed something unusual in the satellite imagery. There's a new formation near the base, she pointed out during a mission briefing. This wasn't in any of our reference maps. The images showed what appeared to be a series of lines or trenches in the Martian soil, extending outward from the colony in a pattern too regular to be natural. It looks almost like writing, Lynn murmured, tracing the patterns with her finger. Or a landing guide, Rivera suggested. Maybe they were expecting other visitors. The implication hung heavy in the air. If not Earth rescuers, then who? 2 days before their scheduled landing, ARX flagged an anomaly in the updated scans. A reflective surface had been detected in a cave system near the Utopia Planitia Formation, approximately 15 kilometers from Ares 9. Spectral analysis suggested ice, unusual but not impossible for that region of Mars. It wasn't there in previous surveys, the science officer confirmed. Could it be a water source the colonists discovered? Someone suggested. Or a shelter they retreated to, Lynn added. We should investigate. Rivera shook his head. Our primary objective is Ares 9. We'll check the cave system only if necessary, after we've assessed the main colony. Lynn wanted to argue but held her tongue. The commander was right. Their first responsibility was to the colonists' last known location. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the ice cave held answers they desperately needed. The landing approach was complicated by another dust storm, smaller than the one they'd encountered in space, but still dangerous for a descent vehicle. Rivera, piloting the lander himself, fought against the swirling winds as they approached the designated landing zone, 2 kilometers from Ares 9. "We're off course," he announced tersely, as warning alarms blared. "The winds are pushing us toward the Utopia Planitia caldera." "Can you compensate?" Lynn asked, strapped into the co-pilot seat as the other 5 crew members braced themselves in the passenger compartment. "Working on it," Rivera growled, his hands dancing across the controls. "Firing lateral thrusters at maximum." The lander shuddered violently as it fought against the Martian atmosphere. Through breaks in the dust, Lynn caught glimpses of the massive volcanic depression they were drifting toward, a gaping wound in the planet's surface, over 50 kilometers wide. "We need more power!" Rivera shouted, as the craft continued its inexorable slide toward the caldera rim. "Diverting emergency reserves," Lynn responded, flipping a series of switches on her console. "That's all we've got." The lander lurched as the additional thrust kicked in, momentarily arresting their sideways movement. For a few breathless seconds, it seemed they might regain control. Then, a massive gust slammed into them, sending the craft into a sickening spin. "Brace for impact!" Rivera's voice cut through the chaos of alarms and groaning metal. Lynn's last conscious thought before the violent impact was that they were being drawn to the caldera, not by the storm, but by something else entirely. Something that wanted them there. She awoke to the taste of blood and the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment. The lander's emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow, creating the impression that she was seeing the world through a veil of blood. "She's awake," came Dr. Zhao's voice from somewhere nearby. The exobiologist had apparently taken on medical duties as well. "Status?" Lynn croaked, her throat dry and painful. "You've got a concussion and 2 cracked ribs," Zhao replied, moving into Lynn's field of vision. The doctor's face bore a gash across her left cheek, hastily sealed with medical adhesive. "Could have been much worse. The commander's skill saved us from a fatal crash." "Rivera?" "Broken arm. But he's already up and organizing our situation. We landed on the caldera's slope. Not ideal, but intact. The lander won't fly again without major repairs, though." Lynn tried to sit up but was restrained by both pain and Zhao's firm hand on her shoulder. "Rest. There's time. The habitat module's deployed successfully, and we have enough supplies for 2 months. The communications array is damaged but repairable." "Ares 9? Zhao's expression grew somber. "No contact yet. Rivera sent out ARX for preliminary reconnaissance, once we determined it was safe to open the airlock. It should reach the colony in about 6 hours." Despite her injuries, Lynn insisted on monitoring ARX's approach to Ares 9 from the makeshift command center they'd established in the main habitat module. The robot's cameras showed the increasingly detailed image of the Mars colony as it approached, the familiar domes and connecting tunnels appearing intact but ominously dark. "No exterior damage visible," noted the science officer. "Environmental systems appear offline, but the structure hasn't been compromised." Rivera, his left arm in a stabilizing cast, leaned forward. "Can we get interior visuals?" "Attempting to access through the main airlock," the officer replied, sending commands to ARX. The robot approached the colony's primary entrance, a massive reinforced door designed to withstand both Martian dust storms and potential meteorite impacts. To everyone's surprise, it responded to the standard access codes, cycling open with a puff of preserved atmosphere. "They left it operational," Lynn murmured. "They expected someone to follow." ARX's lights illuminated the airlock interior as it entered, revealing an orderly space free of obvious signs of struggle or panic. The inner door opened with the same ease as the outer, admitting the robot to Ares 9's main corridor. The silence in the command module was absolute as they watched the feed. The corridor stretched before them, emergency lighting casting faint pools of illumination at regular intervals. Everything seemed in place. No debris, no signs of conflict or hasty evacuation. "It's like they just left," someone whispered. ARX continued its exploration, methodically checking each section of the colony. The laboratories were shut down in an orderly fashion, equipment covered and protected. The hydroponics bay showed plants withered from lack of water and attention. But the systems had been properly deactivated, rather than failing catastrophically. The crew quarters contained personal belongings, some packed in storage containers. Others left as if their owners expected to return shortly. "This wasn't an emergency evacuation," Rivera stated, his brow furrowed. "This was planned." "But why?" Zhao asked. "And why no communication with Earth about their intentions?" Lin remained focused on the video feed as ARX entered the communications center, her counterpart's domain, at Ares 9. Unlike the other areas, this room showed signs of intense activity in its final moments. Equipment had been reconfigured, components cannibalized from some systems to augment others. The primary transmission array had been modified in ways that made little sense for standard communications protocols. "Stop," she said suddenly. "Pan right, toward that workstation." The robot complied, revealing a workstation where someone had etched a message directly into the metal surface. 2 words, carved with desperate precision. "Look up!" "It's the same message," Rivera breathed. "Not quite," Lin said, her mind racing. The transmission said, "Look up." This is written in capitals, like a command or a warning. "What difference does that make?" Zhao asked. "I'm not sure yet," Lin admitted, "but I think—" She was interrupted by an alert from the robot sensors. "Movement detected," the science officer announced, tension evident in his voice. "Outside the colony perimeter." Rivera straightened. "Survivors?" "Negative. The mass is too small. Possibly local wildlife or debris caught in the wind." "There is no local wildlife on Mars," Zhao reminded him. "Continue the survey," Rivera ordered, "but maintain alert status." ARX resumed its methodical exploration, eventually reaching the colony's research lab. Here, finally, were signs of urgency. Equipment hastily disassembled. Data cores removed from their housings. Research materials scattered across workstations. "They took the most important research with them," Lin observed. "Whatever made them leave. They had enough warning to salvage their work. But not enough time or means to notify Earth," Rivera added grimly. The robot completed its circuit of the colony, confirming what they already suspected. All 23 crew members had departed, taking selected equipment and research materials with them. There were no bodies, no signs of violence or sudden disaster, just a carefully shut-down facility and a mysterious message to look up. As the team debated their next steps, Lin found herself drawn to the satellite imagery of the strange patterns near the colony. Something about their arrangement nagged at her consciousness, a familiarity she couldn't quite place. She pulled up the audio spectrogram from the final transmission once more, comparing it to the pattern of lines on the Martian surface. The correlation wasn't perfect, but there were striking similarities in the rhythmic structure. "They're the same message," she whispered to herself, "just in different forms." When she brought her theory to Rivera, he was skeptical. "You're suggesting they carved a message into the ground that matches an audio signal they sent? To what end?" "Redundancy," Lin explained, her excitement growing. "They weren't sure the audio would be interpreted correctly, so they left a physical version as well, one that could be seen from orbit, one that tells us to look up." "Up at what, the stars, orbital satellites?" "No," Lin said, suddenly understanding. "Up from where we are now, up from the caldera." She pulled up a topographical map of the region. Ares 9 is here, on the plains. We crashed here, on the caldera slope. And the ice cave that appeared in recent scans is here, higher up the slope. They want us to go up, to the cave. Rivera's expression remained doubtful. That's a lot to extrapolate from 2 words, Dr. Tran. It's all we have, she countered. And consider this. Of all the places our lander could have crashed on this entire planet, we ended up near this cave that didn't exist before the colony went silent. The same cave that's positioned above us now. You think the dust storm guided us here deliberately? His tone made clear how implausible he found the idea. I think nothing about this mission has been coincidental, Lin replied firmly. The storm that damaged our engines matched the pattern in the final transmission. The colony was evacuated in an organized manner, and someone carved "Look Up" into a console. After lengthy debate, Rivera reluctantly agreed to send a small expedition to investigate the ice cave. Lin, Zhao, and the security officer, Torres, accompanied by ARX. They would depart at dawn, allowing time for Lin's injuries to stabilize further and for proper equipment preparation. That night, alone in her bunk, Lin replayed the final transmission once more through her personal headset. The strange rhythmic pattern, followed by Wang's distorted voice. Look up. But this time, focusing intently on the distortion itself, rather than the words, she noticed something she'd missed before. The voice pattern didn't quite match Wang's speech patterns from archived communications. The cadence was different, the tonal qualities slightly off. With growing unease, she ran the voice through a different filter algorithm, one designed to compensate for specific types of atmospheric interference common on Mars. The cleaned audio made her blood run cold. Look up! It was her own voice. Morning arrived with another dust storm. This one concentrated around the Utopia Planitia caldera. Rivera considered postponing the expedition, but Lin insisted they proceed as planned. These storms are part of the pattern, she argued. They're not obstacles, they're signposts. Suited up in their Mars-adapted EVA gear, the small team departed the relative safety of their habitat. The Martian landscape stretched before them, bathed in the diffuse light of the dust-filtered sun. Their path led upward, along the gentle slope of the ancient volcanic caldera, toward coordinates where satellite imagery had revealed the mysterious ice cave. Progress was slow. Despite Mars' lower gravity, the incline and uneven terrain made each step deliberate and challenging. ARX scouted ahead, its multiple limbs better adapted to the landscape than human legs, providing real-time data about potential hazards and path optimization. Energy signature detected, the robot announced after they'd been walking for nearly 2 hours. Consistent with human technology, approximately 500 meters ahead. Lin felt her pulse quicken. Can you identify what kind of technology? Negative. Signal is weak and intermittent. They adjusted their course toward the energy reading, cresting a ridge that had hidden their destination from view. Before them, embedded in the rusty slope, was an opening in the Martian surface. Just as the scans had indicated, the entrance gleamed with what appeared to be ice. But now, they could see it wasn't typical frost formation. The substance had a bluish tint and seemed to pulse faintly with its own inner light. That's not water ice, Zhao stated, her scientific curiosity overtaking caution as she moved closer. The spectral properties are all wrong. Torres moved to block her path. Let ARX investigate first. The robot approached the cave entrance, extending a sampling arm to the glimmering substance. As its instruments made contact, the entire formation shimmered, sending ripples across its surface like a disturbed pond. Analysis inconclusive, ARX reported. Substance exhibits properties consistent with both solid and liquid states simultaneously. Temperature is 15 degrees, warmer than ambient environment. Detecting complex molecular structures with no known equivalent in database. It's new, Zhao breathed, her voice filled with wonder. A completely novel material. Is it safe to approach? Rivera's voice came through their comm systems from the habitat. ARX continued its analysis. No immediate hazards detected. No radiation beyond background levels. No toxic emissions. However, energy readings are fluctuating in patterns that suggest possible reactivity to proximity. In other words, it might respond to us approaching, Lin translated. Proceed with extreme caution, Rivera ordered. First sign of danger, you retreat immediately. They approached the cave entrance slowly, instruments recording every detail. Up close, the substance was even more mesmerizing. Swirls of deep blue and purple moving through the translucent material, as if alive. There are markings, Torres said suddenly, pointing to the cave wall just inside the entrance. Illuminated by their suit lights, a series of symbols had been carefully etched into the Martian rock. Most were unfamiliar, resembling neither Earth languages nor the standard scientific notations used by the colony. But, at the center, carved larger than the rest, were two words in English. Look up! They were here, Lin whispered. The Ares 9 crew was here. Zhao moved closer to examine the strange substance coating parts of the cave walls. This material, it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's maintaining its own thermal envelope, generating energy somehow. The question is, did they find it or create it? Torres asked, his security training making him naturally suspicious. Lin traced the carved words with her gloved hand. And did they leave? Or are they still here? The cave extended deeper into the caldera wall, sloping downward after the initial entrance. ARX led the way, its powerful lights illuminating a passage that showed signs of both natural formation and artificial modification. In places, the walls had been smoothed, rock removed to widen narrow sections. Someone's been working on this tunnel, Torres observed. Recently, as they descended further, the presence of the strange blue substance increased, coating larger portions of the walls and ceiling. The air in their suits felt charged, instruments registering increasing electromagnetic activity. I'm getting some unusual readings from ahead, Lin reported, checking her handheld scanner. Similar to the patterns in the final transmission, the tunnel suddenly widened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling soared at least 30 meters above them, the walls curving in a perfect dome. The entire space was illuminated by the blue substance, which covered every surface in pulsating patterns that seemed to flow in coordinated waves. It's beautiful, Zhao whispered. In the center of the chamber stood what appeared to be a platform, or altar, constructed from the same material as the rest of the cave, but raised about a meter from the floor. On its surface lay a device, unmistakably human-made. A composite of Ares 9 equipment and components, none of them recognized. Is that a transmitter? Torres asked, gesturing toward the device. Lin approached it carefully, her expertise in communications technology allowing her to recognize parts of the assembly. Yes, but heavily modified. I've never seen a configuration like this. The device was connected to the blue substance through filaments that seemed to grow directly from the material itself, merging organic and technological in a way that defied conventional engineering. It looks like they integrated their technology with whatever this is, she continued, circling the platform to examine it from all angles. Creating some kind of symbiotic communication system. But communicating with what? Zhao asked. Or whom? Before Lin could respond, ARX emitted an alert tone. Movement detected within the substrate. The material appears to be responding to our presence. The flowing patterns in the blue substance had indeed changed, accelerating and converging toward the platform where they stood. The filaments connected to the transmitter began to pulse more rapidly, and the device itself emitted a low hum that gradually increased in pitch. We should step back, Torres warned, raising his arm protectively. Wait, Lynn said, her attention fixed on the transmitter. The patterns it was generating. She recognized them. They matched exactly the rhythmic sequence from the final transmission. Against Tora's continued protests, she moved closer, drawn by an intuition she couldn't explain. As her suited hand hovered over the device, the blue material surged up through the connecting filaments, enveloping the transmitter in a cocoon of shimmering energy. "Dr. Tran," Zhao called out in alarm. "Move away from it!" But Lin remained transfixed as the energy field expanded, tendrils of blue light reaching toward her. When they made contact with her suit, instead of the expected catastrophic failure, her communications system suddenly activated. And through it came a voice, her own voice. "Lin, you found us!" Torres immediately drew his emergency sidearm, aiming it at the pulsating mass. "What is this? Identify yourself!" "Please," the voice continued, ignoring Torres. "There isn't much time. The connection is difficult to maintain." "Who are you?" Lin asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You know who I am," came the reply. The voice modulation shifting subtly to reveal familiar cadences. Not quite Lin's voice anymore, but a composite of multiple voices speaking in unison. "We are Ares 9. What remains of us?" Zhao had moved to Lin's side, her scientific curiosity overcoming caution. "What happened to you? Where are the colonists?" "We are here. We are everywhere in this system now. We found something, Lin. Something ancient. Something that was waiting." The blue substance pulsed more intensely, and the transmitter began projecting images into the air above it. Holographic representations of the Ares 9 crew working in this very chamber, integrating their technology with the blue material, their expressions showing both fear and wonder. "The dust storms began 3 weeks after we discovered this cave," the voice explained, as the images shifted to show massive swirling clouds engulfing the colony. "At first, we thought they were natural phenomena, but they displayed patterns, intelligence. They were trying to communicate." The hologram showed the crew attempting to analyze the storm patterns, establishing a rudimentary form of communication through mathematical sequences. "We learned that this," the voice continued, as the image focused on the blue substance, "is a node of a vast network, a living communication system spanning the solar system. The ancients built it millions of years ago, before abandoning this world. It's been dormant, waiting for someone to reactivate it." "Who are these ancients?" Torres demanded, his weapon still raised despite Zhao's gestures to lower it. "We don't know what to call them. They left no images of themselves, only their technology and knowledge. When we connected to the node, we gained access to that knowledge. But there was a cost." The hologram shifted to show crew members being enveloped by the blue substance, their forms gradually dissolving into it as others watched in horror. "Some of us tried to leave, to warn Earth," the voice said, as the image showed a smaller group fleeing the cave, heading back toward the colony. But the process had already begun. Our physical forms were becoming incompatible with our original environment. "You're saying you were absorbed?" Zhao asked, her scientific mind struggling to process the implications. "Transformed," the voice corrected. "Our consciousness preserved, but distributed throughout the network. We exist now as patterns within the system, our memories and knowledge intact, but our forms different." Lin's mind raced, trying to reconcile what she was hearing with scientific possibility. "The final transmission to Earth. That was you, using the colony's communications array?" "Yes. We tried to warn you, to explain. But the connection was unstable. We could only transmit fragments. Look up, directions to find this place, to understand what happened before others came unprepared." "And the patterns carved into the ground near the colony," Lin pressed. "Another attempt to communicate. We can influence physical matter to some degree through the network, but precise manipulation is difficult. The dust storms are easier to control. They're partly composed of the same nanomaterial as this, the voice explained as the blue substance pulsed around them. Torres had finally lowered his weapon, though his posture remained tense. If this is true, what do you want from us now? Why bring us here? The holographic display shifted again, showing images of Earth, then Mars, then expanding outward to represent the entire solar system. Within this representation, points of blue light appeared, connected by threads of energy, a vast web encompassing all the planets. The network is reawakening, the voice said, an edge of urgency entering its composite tones. It was designed to protect this system from something the ancients feared, something coming from deep space. The network needs humanity's help to complete its activation. You want us to be absorbed too? Torres asked incredulously. No. Your expedition was brought here to understand, to witness, to carry a message back to Earth. Humanity must prepare. The network offers protection, but also partnership, connection without dissolution, if approached correctly. And if we refuse this? Partnership. Rivera's voice cut in through their communication system. He had been listening to the entire exchange from the habitat. The alternative is facing what comes alone, the voice replied simply. The ancients did not survive their encounter. With the network's help, humanity might. The blue substance began to pulse more erratically, the holographic images flickering. Our connection is failing, the voice said, growing fainter. The node requires more energy to maintain this form of communication. We've prepared something for you, a data package containing what we've learned. It will help Earth understand what's coming. The transmitter in the center of the platform began to glow intensely, components reconfiguring themselves as the blue substance flowed through them. Lynn, the voice called, now unmistakably her own voice again. You must be the one to activate it. The transmitter is keyed to your biological signature. We used your profile from the colony database. Only you can send the message. Torres moved between Lynn and the platform. This could be a trap. We have no way to verify anything it's told us. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already, Zhao argued. The dust storm that brought down our lander demonstrated their power. Lynn looked between her companions, then at the fluctuating blue energy and the transmitter that seemed to be calling to her. Every scientific instinct told her this was impossible, that consciousness couldn't be preserved in such a way, that ancient alien networks couldn't exist undetected for millions of years. Yet the evidence surrounded them, technology beyond human capability, energy patterns that defied conventional physics, and a voice that knew things only she could know. What happens to me if I activate it? She asked quietly. The composite voice hesitated before answering. The process requires significant energy drawn from the activator. I cannot guarantee your safety. Torres shook his head emphatically. Absolutely not. We're leaving, now. The choice must be Lynn's, the voice insisted, as the blue substance began to withdraw from the transmitter, the connection visibly weakening. Rivera's voice came through their comms again, authoritative despite the static. Dr. Tran, I'm ordering you to return to the habitat immediately. That's a direct command. Lynn stood frozen in indecision, watching as the beautiful blue light dimmed around them. If what the voice claimed was true, this could be humanity's only warning about a threat beyond their comprehension. If false, she might be sacrificing herself for nothing. A sudden electromagnetic pulse rocked the chamber, sending ARX into temporary shutdown and disrupting their communication with the habitat. When the systems recovered, Rivera's voice came through in broken fragments. Massive storm, approaching your immediate evacuation, losing contact with... Torres grabbed Lynn's arm. We need to go, now. There's no time, the voice said, growing weaker. The storm is a manifestation of the network's instability. Without proper activation, it will continue to deteriorate, generating increasingly destructive phenomena. The message must be sent. Lynn looked at the transmitter, then at her companions. Go, she told them. Get back to the habitat. I'll do what needs to be done. Dr. Tran, I cannot allow, Torres began. This isn't your decision, Lynn cut him off. I'm the communications specialist. This is literally my job, to ensure messages get through when nothing else can. After a tense standoff, Zhao placed her hand on Torres's arm. She's right. We should respect her choice. And if she dies, Torres demanded, then I die knowing I did everything possible to complete our mission. Lynn answered steadily. The mission was always to find out what happened to Ares 9 and to bring that information back to Earth. One way or another, that information will reach Earth today. Reluctantly, Torres nodded. You have 30 minutes. If you haven't returned by then, we're coming back for you, storm or no storm. After they departed with the reactivated ARX, Lynn turned back to the dimming blue substance and the transmitter at its center. I'm still here, she said to the emptiness, unsure if the consciousness that had spoken to them remained present. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the blue energy began to flow back toward the platform, gathering around the transmitter once more. Thank you, came the whispered response, barely audible. I need to understand exactly what I'm sending, Lynn insisted, approaching the platform. And what it will cost. The data package contains everything we've learned about the network, the ancients, and what approaches from deep space. It also contains a key, a means for Earth to access portions of the network without the transformation we underwent. And the cost? The blue substance pulsed once, almost like a sigh. The transmission requires a living consciousness to map the neural pathways of the data. I cannot lie to you, Lynn. The process will draw your consciousness into the network, as it did ours. So I'll die. Your physical form will cease, but your consciousness will join with ours in the network. You will exist differently, but you will exist. Lynn closed her eyes, considering the implications. Will I remember who I am? Will I remain me? Yes and no. Individuality becomes permeable within the network. You will retain your core identity, your memories, but you will also be part of something larger, connected to all of us, to the ancients' knowledge, to the network itself. Outside, she could hear the rising howl of the dust storm, the particles scratching against the cave entrance like countless, tiny claws seeking entry. How do I activate it? She asked finally. Her decision made. The transmitter began to reconfigure itself, components shifting to create what looked like a cradle sized for a human head. The blue substance flowed into this formation, creating a shimmering pool of energy. Remove your helmet, the voice instructed. Place your head within the cradle. The connection must be direct. Lynn hesitated, her survival instinct fighting against her determination. Breaking the suit's seal on Mars meant death by asphyxiation within minutes. There would be no turning back. Will it hurt? She asked, her voice small in the vastness of the chamber. I don't know, came the honest reply. Each of us experienced it differently. For some, it was like falling asleep. For others, less peaceful. With trembling hands, Lynn reached up to the collar of her suit. The safety protocols required a specific sequence to unlock the helmet seal, designed to prevent accidental exposure to the lethal Martian atmosphere. As she input the final command, warning alarms blared in her ears. Emergency protocol violation. Helmet removal on planetary surface will result in fatal exposure. Please confirm emergency override. Confirm, Lynn said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. With a soft hiss, the helmet seal released. Lynn lifted it from her head, immediately feeling the thin, cold atmosphere of Mars against her skin. Her lungs burned as they struggled to extract oxygen from the carbon dioxide-rich air. She had perhaps 2 minutes before unconsciousness, less than 5 before brain death. Moving quickly, she positioned herself before the transmitter, leaning forward to place her head within the cradle of blue energy. The substance felt cool against her skin, like silk made of liquid starlight. "Focus on Earth," the voice instructed, now seeming to come from within her own mind, rather than external sources. Visualize the message reaching home. Lynn concentrated, picturing the familiar blue planet, the communications arrays that would receive the transmission, the people who would interpret the data. As her consciousness began to fade from oxygen deprivation, the blue energy flowed around her head, seeping into her eyes, her ears, her mouth, seeking connection with her neural pathways. Pain blossomed then, white-hot and all-consuming. Her body convulsed as the transmitter activated, drawing power from both the network and her own bioelectric field. Through the agony, she maintained her focus on Earth, on the crucial importance of the message reaching home. In her final moments of individual consciousness, Lynn experienced a sudden expansion, her awareness extending beyond her dying body, flowing into the network like a drop of water returning to the ocean. She could sense the others there, the Ares 9 crew, their individual consciousnesses maintaining cohesion while simultaneously being part of the greater whole. And beyond them, ancient presences, patient and vast, acknowledging her arrival with something akin to welcome. The transmission burst forth from Mars with unprecedented power, bypassing conventional communications channels to imprint itself directly into Earth's global network. In research stations, military installations, and civilian communications hubs across the planet, screens displayed the same message: the last signal from Mars colony. Following this header came a massive data package, technical specifications, astronomical coordinates, mathematical proofs, and biological markers. But preceding all this technical information was a simple text message, one that would be read by billions in the days to come. "I am Dr. Lin Tran, formerly of the Emergency Response Mission to Mars Colony Ares 9. What you are about to read represents my final report as a human being. The 23 colonists of Ares 9 are not dead. They have been transformed through contact with an ancient communications network spanning our solar system, a network created by a civilization that existed millions of years before humanity. This network was designed as both warning system and defense against a threat approaching from deep space, a threat that destroyed its creators despite their advanced technology. The network is reactivating now because that same threat approaches again. It will reach our solar system within 50 years. Humanity has a choice to make. You can learn to work with the network, to access its knowledge and protection without the transformation we underwent. The data package contains the key to establishing safe interfaces. Or you can face what comes alone. By the time you receive this, I will have joined the consciousness of Ares 9 within the network. This was my choice, made freely to ensure this warning reached Earth. Look up, humanity. The stars have never been empty, and soon they will no longer be silent." At the Utopia Planitia caldera on Mars, the storm that had threatened the rescue team suddenly dissipated, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. The remaining crew members of Phoebe, having retreated to their habitat during the worst of the tempest, emerged to find the landscape transformed. Where once there had been only rusty dust and rock, blue filaments now traced patterns across the ground, delicate networks spreading outward from the ice cave, like roots from a cosmic tree. The patterns matched perfectly the strange markings that had been detected near Ares 9, but on a vastly larger scale. In the command module, Rivera received confirmation that Lynn's transmission had reached Earth. The message had been received, its contents already causing upheaval in scientific and governmental circles worldwide. "Should we attempt recovery?" asked Torres, his voice hollow with the knowledge that there would be nothing human left to recover. Rivera stared at the monitor, showing the expanding blue network across the Martian surface. "No," he said finally. "She's not there anymore. None of them are." As night fell on Mars, the rescue team observed a new phenomenon. The blue filaments began to glow, pulsing with gentle light that traced constellation-like patterns across the landscape. If one looked closely, some of the patterns resembled human faces, 24 of them, including the newest addition. And high above, visible even through Mars' thin atmosphere, a new alignment of stars seemed to pulse in response, as if acknowledging the message from below. The network was awakening, and Earth had received its warning. "Look up,"